I'm interested to know your thoughts on this when it comes to publishing the names of these shooters, when it comes to publishing the photos of these shooters, when it comes to sharing the manifestos of these shooters. A lot of news organizations will reference the manifesto, but they won't provide a link to it, which contradicts the journalistic practices that they usually would abide by. Usually if you quote, even if it's a paraphrase of somebody else's work like that, you would accompany that with a link to the source document so that your viewers can read readers can read the source document for themselves, or at least have confidence that you're portraying it accurately. A lot of news organizations are referencing the manifesto without linking to it. A lot of social media platforms are not allowing the manifesto or photographs of the manifesto to circulate on their platform. And I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I personally read this manifesto. As I said, it's 180 pages. It's poisonous, it's toxic, it's evil. I felt like I needed to detox this after I read it. But I think it's really important that we at least have access to this, if not read it ourselves. And that being said, I don't want to give him notoriety. I don't want to give him name recognition. And I do understand the argument that we don't want these manifestos to inspire copycats. I think that's a little bit of a slippery slope argument, because when you have psychopaths or you have these killers and they say that they're inspired by certain words or inspired by certain political policies, we can't allow that to infringe on our free speech. And hear me out. Make sure if you're quoting this, you quote the entirety of what I'm saying here. Because, for example, the congressional baseball game shooting, the shooter that shot Steve Scalise was a fan of Rachel Maddow. The Dayton nightclub shooter was a fan of Elizabeth Warren. And yet, Elizabeth Warren and Rachel Maddow are not blamed. Bernie Sanders is not blamed for these shootings. Why? Because when you have a psychopath, they claim to draw inspiration from things which are not inspiring of violence, right? They can take anything and misinterpret anything and mispurpose anything and channel that into violence. So because a shooter claims inspiration from a person, or because a copycat might claim inspiration from this manifesto, doesn't mean that it's real, doesn't mean that it's a reason for us to censor, or not a reason for us to censor, a reason for government to censor. I also want us to fully understand the ideology of this mass shooter in particular, and how it developed from a poisonous, evil ideology, racism and white supremacy and anti-Semitism, into an act of violence this heinous and this deadly, because we have to understand our enemy in order to protect our people against it. And I don't think that the media, right-wing media, left-wing media, media that claims to be in the middle, whatever, I don't think media should be the gatekeepers of this information. And I don't trust the mainstream media to portray this accurately. Again, I'm interested in your thoughts on this, because I know that there are a lot of people on the right who do what the Daily Wire does, who don't publish the name, don't publish the photograph, and don't want this manifesto to be circulated the way that Inez says that we shouldn't circulate it. Inez Stepman says we shouldn't circulate it. And those are the reasons that I disagree with this. I also think that we're already seeing the slippery slope of censorship when it comes to this idea that that these manifestos shouldn't circulate. On Twitter, for example, Big Tech suspended a user named Mike Davis. It's a very popular conservative account. His username is Mr. DDMIA. And Twitter suspended his account because he posted a tweet that essentially contradicted the left-wing media's narrative about the manifesto, how they're portraying this shooter's ideology. This was the tweet from Mike Davis that got him suspended from Twitter. He said, "Disgusting and insane. The Democrat operatives are already exploiting the murder of 10 by blaming Tucker Carlson and Fox News. The manifesto cites the internet, specific websites, as his inspiration, not TV, and has an anti-Semitic meme attacking Fox News." And then he posts 2 screenshots of, well, the anti-Semitic meme and the part where the shooter cites specific websites as the reason for his views, where he was radicalized, essentially, how he became this racist killer. And Twitter suspended this user. And so we see Big Tech doing what we've talked about on this show many times. Big Tech censoring. And why do they censor us? Why do they censor conservatives? To create an information vacuum so that big media can come in and without any challenges, without any dissent, they can perpetuate their lies. In this case, lies about the ideology of this shooter. So it's an extremely slippery slope. And unfortunately, and maybe it is unfortunately, we have to read these things for ourselves.